The tension in the command tent was thick enough to cut with a knife. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood her ground as 3 senior officers surrounded her, their faces etched with disbelief and barely contained anger. "You're telling us to abort a mission that's been months in the planning?" Colonel Harrison's voice cut through the desert air like shrapnel. "Captain, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you're about to find yourself court-martialed for insubordination." Sarah's hand moved slowly to her tactical vest, fingers finding the sealed envelope she'd hoped never to use. The black clearance badge inside would change everything, if they lived long enough to see what she really was. In the distance, the sound of approaching aircraft grew louder, and Sarah knew that in the next 60 seconds, these men would either trust her completely, or they'd all be dead. The desert wind whipped through the forward operating base as Captain Sarah Mitchell reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Her fingers traced the satellite images spread across the metal table, each photograph telling a story that made her stomach clench with dread. The mission briefing had been clear. Strike Package Alpha would launch at 0600 hours, targeting what command believed to be an enemy weapons cache 15 kilometers north of their position. But the intel was wrong, catastrophically wrong. She'd seen this pattern before, in classified operations that officially never happened. The heat signatures, the vehicle patterns, the communication intercepts. It all pointed to a setup, not an enemy position, but a refugee camp disguised to look like a military target. Families, children, innocent civilians who'd fled the fighting and taken shelter in abandoned buildings, trying to survive another day in a war zone that had already taken everything from them. Sarah closed her eyes. Remy, embering another desert, another time when she'd failed to speak up. The screams still haunted her dreams. Never again, she'd promised herself, never again would she let politics and protocol override her duty to protect the innocent. But standing up to superior officers wasn't just career suicide. It could mean court-martial, prison, the end of everything she'd worked for. Her hand unconsciously moved to the sealed envelope in her tactical vest, the one she'd carried for 3 years without ever needing to use. The sound of approaching boots made her look up. Colonel Harrison strode into the command tent, followed by Major Stevens and Lieutenant Colonel Burke. Their faces were set in hard lines, the expression of men who'd made their decision and wouldn't tolerate interference. Harrison's jaw worked as he studied the mission plans, his weathered face showing the strain of too many combat deployments. "Captain Mitchell," Colonel Harrison's voice carried the authority of 25 years in uniform. "I understand you have concerns about today's operation." The way he said concerns made it clear what he thought about junior officers questioning established plans. Major Stevens crossed his arms, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. She'd served under him before, knew he was a good soldier, but also knew he followed orders without question, even when those orders were wrong. Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of every eye in the tent. "Sir, I've reviewed the intelligence package, and I believe we're targeting the wrong location. The heat signatures and movement patterns are inconsistent with an active weapons facility. The intercepts we've been monitoring suggest civilian population, not military personnel." Her voice remained steady despite the hammering of her heart. Lieutenant Colonel Burke stepped forward, his face flushing red. "Captain, are you seriously suggesting that division intelligence, Pentagon analysts, and 3 levels of command approval are all wrong? And you, a company commander with 4 years of active duty, somehow know better?" The sarcasm dripped from his words like acid. "Maybe you've forgotten how the chain of command works." The tent fell silent except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional radio chatter. Sarah felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. She could back down, follow orders, and hope she was wrong. Hope that the intelligence was correct and that Strike Package Alpha would hit legitimate targets. But hope wasn't enough when lives hung in the balance. "Sir, I'm not questioning the chain of command," Sarah replied carefully. "I'm requesting a delay pending verification of target identification. 48 hours to confirm what we're hitting." Colonel Harrison's eyes narrowed. He'd been in situations like this before, where junior officers got cold feet before major operations. Combat stress, they called it. A failure of nerve when it mattered most. "Captain Mitchell, this mission launches in 30 minutes, Harrison said, his tone brooking no argument. "Strike Package Alpha is already spinning up on the flight line. We have a narrow window of opportunity, and I will not let the entire operation fail because one officer has developed sudden doubts. His words hit like hammer blows, each one designed to remind her of her place in the military hierarchy. Major Stevens nodded in agreement. Sarah, I know you're trying to do the right thing, but sometimes in war, we have to trust the system. Trust the intelligence professionals who've analyzed this target for weeks. Trust the commanders who've approved this operation, and at the highest levels. His voice carried a note of fatherly concern, but underneath lay steel. Sarah looked around the tent, seeing the faces of men she respected, men she'd served alongside, men who were about to make a decision that would haunt them forever. The sound of aircraft engines grew louder outside, Apache helicopters and A-10 Thunderbolts preparing for their deadly mission. In less than 30 minutes, those aircraft would rain hell on what command believed was an enemy position. Her hand moved to the sealed envelope again, fingers tracing the edges of the document she'd hoped never to use. The black clearance badge inside represented authority she'd earned through missions that officially never happened, operations that existed only in the deepest Pentagon files. Using it would blow her cover, end her ability to work in the shadows, compromise ongoing operations that stretched across 3 continents. But as the roar of jet engines filled the air and she watched these good men prepare to unknowingly commit mass murder, Sarah Mitchell realized that some secrets were worth sacrificing, some truths were worth telling, even when they destroyed everything you'd built. Her fingers found the envelope seal, and she began to tear it open. The black Pentagon identification badge caught the harsh fluorescent light as Sarah placed it on the metal table. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant whine of aircraft engines and the sudden sharp intake of breath from Colonel Harrison. The badge bore classifications that most officers would never see, clearance levels that existed in whispered rumors and classified briefings. Major Stevens leaned forward, his face pale as he read the designation. Omega-7, he whispered, the words barely audible. Lieutenant Colonel Burke's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something approaching fear. Sarah watched their faces change as the implications sank in. Omega-7 wasn't just high clearance. It was the designation for deep cover operatives working directly under Pentagon Special Operations Command. Officers who officially didn't exist, whose missions were buried so deep they appeared in no databases, no official records, no chain of command that anyone in this tent could access. Colonel Harrison's hand trembled slightly as he picked up the badge, examining the security features that were impossible to fake. The holographic seals, the embedded chips, the biometric markers, all genuine, all confirming what he didn't want to believe. Captain Mitchell, his voice had lost its commanding edge, replaced by uncertainty and growing dread. What the hell is going on here? Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of 3 years of deception lifting from her shoulders. For 36 months, she'd lived as Captain Sarah Mitchell, company commander, regular Army officer with an unremarkable service record. The truth was far more complicated. Gentlemen, my real designation is Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, Special Activities Division. I've been embedded in this unit under deep cover for the past 3 years, monitoring intelligence leak, as in tracking weapons smuggling operations. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. Major Stevens sank into a folding chair, his face ashen. Burke began pacing, running his hands through his hair as he processed the information. Harrison stared at the badge, then at Sarah, then back at the badge, as if trying to make sense of a puzzle with too many pieces. The target you're planning to hit, Sarah continued, her voice taking on the authority that came with her real rank, is not an enemy weapons cache. It's a safe house for Operation Nightingale, a joint CIA-Pentagon extraction point for high-value intelligence assets and their families. 23 people, including 7 children, are sheltering there while waiting for transport to secure facilities. The words landed like artillery shells in the confined space. Colonel Harrison's face went white. That's impossible. The intelligence clearly shows enemy activity, weapons signatures, hostile communications. But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his voice. Sarah pulled a secured tablet from her pack, entering codes that bypassed normal military networks and accessed classified Pentagon databases. The hostile communications you've been monitoring are actually coded transmissions from our assets, using frequencies and encryption that your standard intercept equipment can't properly decode. What looks like weapons movement is families carrying their possessions, trying to stay hidden while they wait for extraction. The tablet screen showed real-time satellite feeds, classified imagery that told a completely different story than the intelligence package division had provided. Lieutenant Colonel Burke stopped pacing. If this is true, then where did our intel come from? Who authorized this strike? His training was taking over, military mind working through the implications. Sarah's expression darkened as she accessed another file, this one marked with security classifications that made even her Omega-7 clearance barely sufficient. The intelligence was deliberately falsified, she said quietly. We've been tracking a cell within division intelligence that's been selling targeting information to enemy forces. They've been setting up our own operations, getting our people killed and covering their tracks by feeding us false targets. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Strike Package Alpha wasn't ordered to hit an enemy position. You were ordered to destroy evidence and eliminate witnesses to Operation Nightingale. Major Stevens looked up sharply. You're saying someone in our own command structure set us up to commit a war crime? The question carried the weight of every principle they'd sworn to uphold, every oath they'd taken to protect the innocent and serve their country with honor. The sound of approaching aircraft grew louder and Sarah glanced at her watch. Strike Package Alpha launches in 12 minutes unless we abort right now. Those pilots have no idea what they're really being asked to do. She activated her secure communications gear, equipment that had been hidden in her standard military kit for 3 years. This is Omega-7 Actual to Pentagon Watch Command. Authorization Nightshade 7-7 Alpha, requesting immediate mission abort for Strike Package Alpha. The response came through encrypted channels that bypassed ALTAL, a local command structure. Roger, Omega-7. Pentagon confirms abort order. Mission is scrubbed pending investigation. Sarah looked up at the 3 officers, seeing their world reshape itself around this new reality. Colonel Harrison slowly removed his helmet, setting it on the table beside the Pentagon badge. Lieutenant Colonel, he said, using her real rank for the first time. What do you need from us? The question carried the weight of a career soldier recognizing authority he didn't fully understand, but knew he had to respect. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for these men who could adapt, who could put mission above ego when lives were at stake. I need you to help me arrest the traitors in Division Intelligence before they realize their operation has been blown. I need your people to secure the safe house and protect those families until extraction is complete. And I need you to keep this classified until Special Activities Division can determine how deep this conspiracy goes. She paused, looking at each man in turn. Can I count on your support? Outside, the aircraft engines began winding down as abort orders reached the flight line. Major Stevens stood, his color returning as purpose replaced shock. Ma'am, you've got it, whatever you need. Lieutenant Colonel Burke nodded grimly, already mentally preparing for the difficult conversations ahead. Colonel Harrison picked up the Pentagon badge, holding it for a moment before handing it back to Sarah. Lieutenant Colonel Chen, he said formally. It's been an honor serving with you, even if I didn't know who you really were. He paused, managing a slight smile. Though I have to ask, is there anything else about my command that isn't what it seems? Sarah smiled back, the first genuine expression of relief she'd shown all day. Sir, I think you'll find that most of your people are exactly who they appear to be. Good soldiers doing their duty, protecting the innocent, serving something bigger than themselves. As the sound of aircraft engines faded into the desert wind, she added quietly, and that's exactly why this mission was worth saving. The story of Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen reminds us that true heroism often happens in moments when no one is watching, when the right choice means sacrificing everything you've built for something greater than yourself. In a world where split-second decisions can mean the difference between justice and tragedy, our military men and women carry burdens that most of us will never fully understand. These are the stories that need to be told, not just of combat heroism, but of moral courage, of officers who risk everything to protect the innocent, of the complex realities our service members face every day. Behind every uniform is a human being making impossible choices, carrying classified burdens, serving with honor even when that service demands personal sacrifice. If stories like Sarah's inspire you, if you believe these tales of hidden heroism deserve to be shared, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Help us honor the men and women who serve in the shadows, whose greatest victories will never make headlines, whose sacrifices keep us safe in ways we may never know. Share these stories with others who understand that freedom isn't free and that heroes come in many forms, sometimes wearing the rank they've earned, sometimes hiding behind covers that serve a greater good. Thank you for watching, and remember, somewhere right now, someone in uniform is making the hard choice to do what's right, regardless of the personal cost.